Yesterday, I wrote a story about a Gemma open model that helped researchers find perhaps a novel treatment for cancer, possibly. And that's because model was able to work through data in a way that humans could not. That's the dream, right? That's what's supposed to happen. But I don't hear a lot about that.
The Amber Mack Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Welcome to the Amber Mack Show. Coming up in today's show, the makers of ChatGPT want to be a new home for erotic content. I wish I were joking. Just on the heels of their major issues handling mental health requests and kids, looks like they are forging down a new path. We're also going to dive into the dangers of embracing crypto and what you need to know about Google's AI overviews that are taking over search.
They sure are, Amber. And in this week's The Other Mac, I'm also going to do a deep dive into how Elon Musk plans to fight back against bots. But I want to be really clear that he's been trying to win this fight since he bought Twitter, and things have only gotten worse. That's coming up soon, but first, let's get to this week's tech headlines.
Newsfeed.
Well, in an example of the dangers of embracing crypto in the face of the Trump administration's opening of the floodgates, PayPal's blockchain partner Paxos accidentally minted $300 trillion worth of stablecoins last Wednesday before discovering their error. Jeff, if I am understanding what stablecoins claim to be, they're supposed to be backed by US dollars and redeemable on a one-to-one basis with that currency. So it does seem a little bit strange that a company could mint twice the entire planet's GDP worth of stablecoins, and it only took about 20 minutes.
It lasted for about 20 minutes at least. Paxos said this was an internal technical error. There is no security breach. Customer funds are safe. We have addressed the root cause. But I'm no crypto expert, but it does seem like there'd have been about 20 minutes where someone could have done something with an amount of money that would make even the biggest billionaire bro blush. So it's definitely not a confidence booster that this happened. But speaking of things that make billionaire bros happy, according to the Digital 2026 report from Meltwater and We Are Social, it looks like the number of users of AI apps, which include ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Claude, it now exceeds 1 billion users. And the entirety of that growth, we have to remember, happened since ChatGPT's launch, which was only a few years ago in November 2022. And ChatGPT does account for about 80% of those users. So the numbers are really pretty impressive and show how quickly AI is being adopted by consumers.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible just to see in a few years. I don't think we've seen tech adoption like this, at least in our lifetime. And as much as consumers may be turning to AI tools, it is worth noting that an almost 30,000 person survey conducted by Pew Research Center found that only about 16% of respondents were more excited about the possibilities of AI than were concerned about what may happen with AI in the future. I see this at my keynotes all the time. We've covered some questionable behavior from some of these big AI companies, especially in the social space, which I'm sure doesn't help with that confidence. And NBC has recently reported that at least 7 nonprofits have been critical of OpenAI, and they have received subpoenas in the past few months that are allegedly part of the case between OpenAI and Elon Musk. This never goes away, but which the nonprofits say are designed to actually intimidate and silence them.
Yeah, and you know, the subpoenas, they ask for information about the nonprofit organization's funders and donations, as well as for a host of other documents. So it seems plausible that's exactly what OpenAI is trying to do. And to be specific, the nonprofits were critical of OpenAI trying to abandon its original nonprofit structure, which Elon Musk also was critical of, and that's why those two things tie together. So these nonprofits were critical of OpenAI trying to go from its nonprofit structure to become a for-profit public benefit corporation, which is a concept that I have to say seems a little internally incoherent to me. For-profit public benefit corporation. I'm not sure how that all works together. But AI says it's required for them to raise the capital to accomplish its mission, that they become a for-profit company. So that is what they say is motivating them in this quest to go from a nonprofit to something where they can get at even more money.
Well, I'm not sure that there is a better segue to share. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has recently announced that ChatGPT will allow erotica for verified adults. He followed this up by saying that as AI becomes more important in people's lives, allowing a lot of freedom for people to use AI in the ways that they want is an important part of our mission. So I guess that porn is an important part of the OpenAI mission now. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I think what seems obvious, especially as we talked about with Sora being probably a way for them to try to raise some funds. Porn seems to be another way for OpenAI to both make money, but also importantly to addict users to their service, just like social media has done in various other ways. And that's ignoring the fact that AI says it plans to verify adult users, but we've seen that that can be very difficult, and they've had some just tragic consequences in the past for how they are treating people who are too young to access this kind of information because they can't reliably verify adults. But as Sam Altman says, quote, "We are not the elected moral police of the world," and that seems like a little too on the nose. But he responded to all the uproar around this by tweeting, "Okay, this tweet about upcoming changes to ChatGPT blew up on the erotica point much more than I thought it was going to. It was meant to be just one example of us allowing more user freedom for adults," end quote. Uh, as you talked about last week with regard to Altman's like, golly gee, really Sora reaction stuff, it's really hard to believe that Sam Altman is thick enough to have actually been surprised by this. I mean, giant AI company announced it's gonna start doing porn. Is It's pretty big news, and I'm sure he knew that. So it seems it's more likely that this is just another example of the entrenchment of, golly, what, did we do something controversial thing that, the big tech bros seem to be, so fond of these days? And really, it's probably just for a marketing boost where they know that's very controversial, and they know they're gonna get a bunch of press on it, and we'll be talking about it and other people, so, to be like, "Holy cow, I can't believe that when my company said that our robots were gonna start doing porn, people were surprised."
I think we would both be willing to give up our phone numbers to Sam Altman to say, "Hey, before you launch something, if you just wanna have a little vibe check, just send a message. We'll let you know how this is gonna go over," because clearly he has a lot of, yes man people around him.
I'd
Uh,
say.
Jeff, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on with our guest because I think there's a lot more to unpack in this story. And in another porn related story, the state of Wisconsin has put forward a bill that would require adults only sites to block VPNs in order to make it harder to get around their age verification laws. A similar bill is being considered in Michigan, and the Children's Commissioner for England, which is also putting age restriction laws in place, said that the government, again quoting here, needs to stop children using VPNs to bypass age checks, and that their use is absolutely a loophole that needs closing.
I I'm totally sure that that won't make privacy advocates very happy, but I definitely see her point, and I think we're both on the same page where, uh, we need to pay some costs to keep children safe on the internet. It's our freedom is not more important than their health, so, it's anyway, let's hope that there's some progress with that. In other news, and speaking of people listening to the show, maybe somebody at Pinterest has been watching the Amber Mac show and heard my complaints because the company is actually taking some small steps towards letting users limit the amount of AI content in their feeds. And, you know, it it seems, in fairness, that I'm not the only one complaining about this. There are so many users when I looked up, the Pinterest thing on Reddit. So many users complaining about the overwhelming amounts of AI slop on Pinterest. What is actually being offered is a new refine your recommendations setting that lets you limit generative AI in specific categories of the app, which seems to be a bit of a weird approach to me. Um, because really what I want and what a lot of the people whose comments I read on Reddit want is to never see any AI generated content. So I have to wonder about their ability to do this. I have to wonder about their determination to actually identify generative AI content, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I do wanna give a big shout out to Pinterest because if you do follow them over the years, they're very open and willing to actually change course when they realize that maybe they have gone a little bit off track. So, certainly, I think you're right. This is a move in the right direction. I think they've always been a little bit more conscious about, healthy online experiences than some of their competitors, which is great for you, Jeff, because I know Pinterest is your go-to.
I love me some Pinterest. You follow me there at Jeff MacArthur.
I will absolutely do that. Now let's head over the Atlantic, where news publishers in yet another European country are objecting to Google's AI overviews. You've probably seen these when you're searching in Chrome, the little overviews at the top, which they probably very justifiably say cuts them out of the traffic chain for their own content. As the Italian Federation of Newspaper Publishers notes, Google is becoming a traffic killer that reduces visibility and discoverability and thus our advertising revenues.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And a study from a UK analytics company said that Google's AI interviews, AI overviews rather, led to up to 80% fewer click throughs. So that's huge. And it doesn't really surprise me at all. In another strange story from Europe, it looks like Apple's new M5 14-inch MacBook Pro will not include a charger in the box, only in Europe. Every other country in the world, it'll have a charger in the box. This seems to be because of some upcoming European regulations that require Apple to offer an option without a charger in the box. So I'm guessing that Apple basically doesn't want to have to manufacture a bunch of extra chargers in addition to the ones that they would sell with the new computer, just so they can have computers that don't sell them. The EU is great at many things, but they get a little carried away with some of this stuff. In any case, uh, this is something that won't affect most people. But if you're in Europe, you're going to notice that you're going to have to work in the cost to buy a charger on top of the $1,000 plus computer that you're going to buy.
Yeah, I mean, and that adds up as well. So I guess it makes some sense there, but certainly a confusing story for consumers. Now, coming up next in the other Mac, Jeff, you're going to talk about why X is planning to show more information in user profiles as part of its alleged battle against the bots.
The Other Mac.
In April 2022, before his purchase of Twitter, Elon Musk tweeted, "If our Twitter bid succeeds, we will defeat the spam bots or die trying." Unfortunately, as with many things Elon Musk claims, neither of those things have happened. In fact, both hate speech and spam bots on Twitter have spiked after Musk's purchase. And the haphazard efforts made by his team, like trying to make people pay to be authenticated, have not really moved the needle much since then. Although X has recently claimed to have removed 1.7 million bots engaging in reply spam, boldly claiming that users should start noticing improvements in the coming days. Suffice to say, I've certainly noticed no improvement. But how bad is the bot problem on X? Well, Musk's Grok chatbot embedded in X says that without transparent data from X, the true percentage remains unclear, but credible estimates lean towards 20 to 37% for active accounts, with higher figures possible depending on the criteria used. In fact, a 2024 study by Fifth Column AI, analyzing almost 1.27 million accounts, estimated that 64% were potentially bots. So that's quite something for one of the key social media platforms in existence today to be almost two-thirds non-humans. And it shows just how insignificant a reduction of 1.7 million bots, if that's even true, for a user base of roughly 600 million is. So after several years of failing to keep his promise, what are Musk's minions now proposing? Well, on April 14th, X's head of product, Nikita Beer, tweeted the following. "When you read content on X, you should be able to verify its authenticity. This is critical to getting a pulse on important issues happening in the world. As part of that, we're experimenting with displaying new information on profiles, including which country an account is based, among other details. Starting next week, we will surface this on a handful of profiles of X team members to get feedback." So this about this account information looks like it would share each user's location, the age of the account, and how many times the account has changed its username, which may be somewhat useful, but really puts the responsibility in the hands of individual users instead of X addressing their bot problems directly. And beyond that, in response to a Homer fading into the hedge meme post about UK users maybe not wanting this, Nikita responded, "This is great feedback. In EU countries where speech can have penalties, we should substitute country for region to preserve the right of free expression," end quote. But this was soon followed by, quote, "There will be privacy toggles. However, if a user configures them, that will likely be highlighted on their profile. More to come," end quote. So this proposal seems like it will be even less useful than it appeared at first glance. And I mean, none other than failed Republican politician Matt Gaetz reacted to the announcement on One America News by calling the displaying of users' country of origin a game changer, before noting, and I quote, "Of course, spies will VPN their way around the new transparency measure, but making it tougher and pricier for bad foreign actors to lie and manipulate our fellow Americans is still a win. It's no silver bullet, but it's certainly a start. X's leadership gets it. We're very glad to know X is in good hands," end quote. Now, I should note that the One America News actually misquotes their own video in the tweet this came from, which is pretty sus. But more importantly, how is it a game changer with respect to spam bots for X to implement a feature that only exposes information on accounts that don't turn on their privacy settings and that can be entirely avoided by using a VPN? Frankly, this seems like more big tech PR theatrics pretending they're solving a major problem by simply engineering a way to maybe sometimes give a little bit more information to users so that the users themselves can decide if they want to mute or block a potential bot without X itself necessarily taking any further action. I mean, let's face it, Musk's X spam bot promises aren't worth any more than the years of lies he's been spinning around Tesla's being able to safely drive without human intervention. And the trend of passing on responsibility to individual users to deal with problems themselves is just another example of the kind of half measures that big tech increasingly seems to be embracing. As I see it, either the leadership and engineers at X aren't skilled or inspired enough to really deal with spam bots, or they don't really actually want to deal with them. And I mean, hey, if you were a social media network, would you take meaningful action on a problem like this if it meant that your user numbers might be reduced by 2/3? Or perhaps even worse, would you want to be the one to de-amplify your blowhard boss's unhinged tweeting by cutting Musk's own followers by 2/3? I'll leave that for you to answer, but I, for one, will not be holding my breath in hopes that X's spam bot problems will ever be solved under the current management. I'm the other Mac. Keep it real out there.
The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
Lance Ulanoff has spent more than 3 decades on the cutting edge of media technology. He's led major media operations, including Mashable and PC Magazine, and he's worked in the digital space since the dawn of the consumer web. He's a well-known tech journalist and editor-at-large for Tech Radar, and he joined Amber to talk about OpenAI's move into erotic content.
Lance, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I want to break down this news over the past few days that OpenAI is now going to be allowing erotica on ChatGPT. This is something that's going to happen in a few weeks. So, what was your first reaction to that announcement?
Well, I'm not. I mean, every first of all, every single time there's any AI update across any of the models, any of the platforms, people are always trying all sorts of stuff with it. It's not just adult content. It's putting known figures, historical or current figures into weird situations. Literally, just a little while ago, OpenAI just said that they're going to sort of pull back a little bit on Sora 2 because people are using Martin Luther King in like speeches he never made, and I had noticed that right away. So none of this is surprising. People will give people a tool to do what people do. That's what happens. But I should add that what's interesting about what's happening here is this all kind of came about because of GPT-5. So GPT-5 took the whole model and kind of, I don't know, leveled it up, made it more adult, made it less adult, meaning like mature or less interesting, less sycophantic, sort of this weird kind of pulling away from what I don't think OpenAI realized how people had connected with 4.0, the previous model. It's very strange that people make these connections with these models, but they did. And so GPT-5 kind of cleaned all that up. And the post that Sam made, which mentioned the erotica, was really just about kind of reopening GPT-5 up, sort of having this balance of we'll make sure that people are protected for mental health awareness, but we're also going to recognize you're adult people who want to do what you want to do. And so there'll be a pathway for you to do that with GPT-5. So and I don't know if you noticed after that, that Sam Altman, like, I don't know, it was the next day or whatever, it's like, gosh, I had no idea you were all going to fixate on the erotica so much. I'm like, duh. The people, this is what they do. And so it's kind of like, maybe it's not that big of a deal. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we've seen from Sam Altman over the past few months is that he always seems shocked by things that those of us who work in the tech space would not be shocked about. So that certainly is a bit of a surprise that maybe there's a disconnect in terms of him understanding the reaction that people will have. One of the things that I don't really understand from this announcement, and I say announcement, I'm kind of putting quotes around that because it really, it's not like it was a big new release is why do you think that they want to serve all of these different audiences? And I ask that because I think we've seen historically with some of the big tech companies is that they tend to do well when they focus on business or focus on consumers, focus on adults. Like even if you look at the history of the porn industry, I mean, they've been very clear that hey, this is for adults. But it feels to me like Sam Altman wants to appease everyone, and I just don't think that's possible.
Well, let's think about what's happened with AI. So every conversation I have with people about this revolution, I say we're living on AI time, right? Everything's happening faster than it would, even in the normal tech space, where it took 18 months for something to happen. It'll take like 6, right? So it's at least 3x the times that we used to see. So that's part one. Part two is that. And this is directly related to it, is that AI is connected to consumers, regular people, in a way that previous emerging technologies never did or never did in that amount of time. It took a much longer time for everyone to get on the internet. It took a much longer time for people to have smartphones. Everything it took much longer time for everyone to really get engaged on social media. But AI, talk to anyone outside of our sphere, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I used it." Like, "What?" "Yeah, I just used it the other day." Like, "But you're not a tech person." "Yeah, it was on my phone. Yeah, I had an app. It was on my computer. It was here, and I just used it. I asked it a question, and it gave me what I wanted, so that's cool." But yeah, I'm also terrified of it. So, when you think of it that way, that this touches everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, it kind of makes sense that Sam Altman is going after everybody. Um, and, at a very base level, everyone's a sexual being, right? So there's that. And I think he's kind of saying, well, that's part of the human experience. So let's not act as if this thing doesn't exist. And I think I mentioned to you on one of the many platforms, I said that, there is a long history, right, of sort of the adult industry leading the way in technology, right, causing the breakthrough. And maybe, he feels that he sort of left that bit out. It certainly happened with VHS tapes, with CDs, with the internet, with streaming. I was thinking back to that the fact that I literally saw the first time I ever saw streaming video at CES was from an adult entertainment company. Before Netflix, before any of them, some company that made their own box, and we all thought it was magic. It was gross, and it was magic. So I'm actually not surprised, but I also don't entirely know what he really means when he says erotica. Like, what does that actually encompass? Like, because there's a lot of different ways to go here.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I just for fun went on to ChatGPT and asked that exact question. What are the plans in terms of allowing erotica? And it was interesting to see the response because a lot of it was focused on AI companions and recognizing that right now more and more people are using tools like ChatGPT because they are experiencing loneliness and they do want companionship. And so, in that context, I think I too can understand why he potentially would want people to be able to have really, open adult like conversations. But the place that things kind of break down for me a little bit is that you hear Sam Altman talk a lot about young people. It is true as well that when it comes to ChatGPT, it's 13 plus, and so those questions make me just wonder aloud why he's courting people who are, again, under 18 potentially, but also trying to appease adults. And at the same time, it was just months ago that he got into so much trouble in terms of the issues that we've seen with young people using ChatGPT for mental health support, even leading to the suicide of a young man that, of course, has been all over the headlines over the past few months. So that piece of to me is a little bit confusing. He kind of wants both young people to use
Yeah.
it and adults, and I don't know if you can do that.
I know it goes back to that statement you made, a tool for everyone. Like, can this really serve all people? And, I think that there's a it's just a weird situation right now because there's no slowing this development down, right? How often do we see model updates? I mean, it comes every few months, 2 to 3 months. We have a new model and it's faster and better and more powerful. It can do things you never expected. And so that's happening concurrently with the mass adoption of this thing. So it's almost like they have to have an answer for every kind of person, and they sort of try. I think that because of the speed of everything, total lack of guardrails, zero regulation of any sort that actually makes any kind of sense. And I don't even know if they're going to try and put at some point they're going to really try and put regulation in place while the cart is speeding down the hill at 100 miles an hour. Good luck changing the tires. Not going to happen. It's just going to keep going. And so, that's why you see situations like this where speaking almost seems to be out of both sides of his mouth. Like, well, we're going to worry about mental health of kids, and here's some adult content, and all of it at once. So simultaneously, because everybody's in AI, right? So Meta is just making it possible now for parents to say, your kids can't talk to our AI characters. You can turn it off. This is months after them saying, "Hey, guess what? We got all these cool AI characters everyone can talk to." Da, da, da," because no one realized what was going to happen. It's almost like nobody they're it's like building Frankenstein monsters over and over and over again, and then you hit the electricity and you're like, "Oh my gosh, they're running around killing things and throwing kids into lakes and stuff." I had no idea that was gonna happen. But, nothing kills the Frankenstein monster, he just keeps going on, and I don't think all AI is monstrous by any stretch, but I think that there's this level total lack of control. And, when you hear things like this and the fact that you asked ChatGPT, "What do you mean by that?" And it's kinda like, "Well, he says mean that they're trying companionship." I didn't say companionship, I said erotica, but companionship. These are different things in a way, and yet we don't have clarity. We just have, excitement, confusion, more stuff to do, more things to look at, more confusion. And I wish I could say that I thought things were going to get better, but I think that's not the case. It's a very unusual time we live in. So it's more like just try and stay abreast of it, stay in contact and know what's going on and try and figure out what these things actually mean. But for young people in particular, I really think that there's a strong case for keeping them away from tools like this for as long as possible because you just don't know the outcomes.
You have been reporting on tech for many, many years, and I think one of the things I think about a lot with this new era of tech leaders is that they seem to be pushing boundaries in a way that we haven't really seen before. It was pretty accepted in the early days of social media that the tech companies would, in fact, have guardrails in place to keep people safe. When do you think that focus and that need kind of disappeared because now we have Mark Zuckerberg, we have Elon Musk, we have Sam Altman, who again they don't want to be the moral police of the world, and yet they basically are running our world in terms of our digital experiences online, especially in social.
Yeah, there's that show that was on, Alien Earth, right? And one part of it is that the world is run by a bunch of sort of tech oligarchs, like it's chunked up by these people. And in our real world, these guys, these people are very powerful. They have tremendous control. And I sometimes don't even think they understand the level of it. They're just kind of like cool stuff, cool stuff. I think the guardrails have come off because culture has taken a shift in the last few years, and in the US in particular in the last year or so. And we see that I mean, this is why we're not approaching regulation at this moment because I'm not sure they really care. They're much more, there is a recognition that country by country we're in a race, right? We're in a race versus China and other countries that are developing, fast developing these tools. And any kind of regulation, any kind of caution, care might hold us back. And I think that that's a very different time from when we were social media was first coming up. I mean, there was a period of time with social media where, it was just kind of fun. It was the golden age, I used to call it, like the period of 2009 to 2013, roughly that period of time. It was great. You were meeting and talking to people and engaging with personalities and just regular people you would never have met before, sharing ideas, learning things. News events were happening in real time, and you were seeing it. It felt wonderful. And then it kinda broke because the rest of the world and bad actors realized that this was a tunnel, a pipeline to your brain, and you could flood it, with information, and that actually caused a pullback. So we had that little period of time of pullback and caution and care and concern, and that went so maybe it went all the way the other way, but now we're kind of like whatever, mostly whatever. And it's only moments of tragedy where somebody maybe is compelled to do something terrible to themselves because they talk to an AI where everyone goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah, okay. We'll do something. We'll make sure there are guardrails for kids." But you and I both know the reality with kids and social media and technology. One, they're usually ahead of the parents. Two, good luck getting them to verify their age. Parents have to really be on top of it to ensure that their kids are not on these platforms because otherwise they're just going to say whatever age works that gives them the most access to all of this stuff. I wish I had some good answers for you. I feel like I've given you nothing but terrible answers.
No, I think you have brought up so many good points, and this question around parental consent, I think, is one where these big tech companies either they don't understand how people use devices among families and in homes, especially young people and teens, or they're just lying to people and slapping on these parental controls because they're trying to appease people who do want those guardrails in place. But anyone in the technology sector will understand that young people, especially teens, I have a 16-year-old at home, so I know this, is not going to come to me and say, "Hey, I want to use ChatGPT. Would you get me an account and oversee what I'm doing?" That is just not a conversation that these people are having, which kind of, I think, begs the question to some of these tech leaders: is that are they lying or are they just okay with doing the bare minimum. Those things I can't quite figure out in this day and age, and that's where all of us are kind of perplexed, right?
I mean, look, they're all businesses, right? They're all dealing with shareholders. They're all worried about making money for themselves, for the shareholders to perpetuate the business. I mean, that is fundamentally what these things are. They are not for the public good. That is, sometimes a byproduct of what they provide, and sometimes it's not. It is, we hear so technology is so permeated our society and the fact that we all carry around these phones and that our kids have them at a certain age and that it's inescapable, it's at every turn. And it used to be very simple, back in 25 years ago when people would talk to me about issues like this, kids and technology, I'd say, going online. They say, how do we protect our kids? And they go online. I'd say, have the computer out in a central space so that you're all, if anyone's going online, you're all together. That was when it didn't fit in your pocket. And now I don't know what that answer is. The answer is what's interesting is I'm seeing some reports of some schools. There's actually a school near where I live where they're banning phones in the school. So at least during that time, there are literally no phones. No phones in class, no phones in the hallway, just none all day long. And it's a transformative thing. Even the kids are saying it's a transformative thing. And I think we have to kind of rethink how we're introducing technology into our families, to our children, because we know they're going to encounter these tools. We know they're going to encounter ChatGPT. They are going to sometimes be in their class and it's going to be part of the learning process, right? So that's a controlled space and that's great. So then you have to think about, well, happens if they have access to it outside of that controlled space? So I don't envy my kids are adults. They're grown up. It's not something I have to worry about, and I'm glad about that because I can see how difficult it is. But I wish more people spent more time thinking about it, and I wish these companies were, as you kind of put it, would be more honest about this stuff. They'd recognize the realities of situations and stop providing band-aids and say, "Well, look, we did what we need to do. You have the control. Isn't that enough?"
I am with you on this. I do a lot of speaking about AI, and I talk a lot about AI in the context of healthcare. And I think it's really exciting insofar as the possibilities and the opportunities there, and life saving opportunities and life changing opportunities. I mean, it's amazing. I think about companies like Whoop. I wear a Whoop band all the time, and they just did a partnership so that you're able to take your blood work and basically upload it to Whoop, and then along with all your vitals, your sleep and your strain, your exercise, you'll be able to better understand the state of your health. I mean, all of this stuff I think is tremendous. I think the one piece that I struggle with a little bit is probably the companion piece of AI, because, like you said, we see all of these big tech companies doing this. We see this with Grok, for example, and those experiences always end up being sort of sexualized in terms of having these kind of sexy avatars that people can talk to. We see it with Meta and their AI companions, and now we see Sam Altman getting into this space in a small way, but we know companionship is what I think a lot of people are actually using ChatGPT for, and that will probably continue. Is this piece something that you see as a positive in terms of the effects on our society, or do you think that the more we rely on having AI companions, is that going to kind of take away from the human experience?
Well, I think there's ample evidence that we need a lot more human togetherness. We don't seem to understand each other very well. AI is no substitute for that. But at the same time, there are always going to be situations where people are lonely or unable to be with other people. I think back to, going back 25 years and since then, what we've seen is a bit of development around the idea of elderly people who can't leave wherever they are. And so they have these companions that are usually robotic. There was Paro and there's been others. And they really just give them a sense of connection because they can't go out and do it. So imagine people in a similar situation and have this ability to just feel less alone because they're able to talk to an AI companion that has a memory of the conversations they've had. So it has an understanding of them, knows what they like, what they don't like, understands their lives a little bit, and can use that to kind of make a semi-realistic, what seems to be a realistic friendship or companionship. I think that's useful. Uh, but I don't think that when you have the ability to be around other people and you can get out there and talk to real human beings, it should be a substitute for that because that's always going to be the best thing for people, as far as I know. Look, I'm no expert on interpersonal relationships, but I have to believe that talking to real people who are not trained on the corpus of information that's on the internet, which is still in a way narrowly focused. It doesn't give you the context of the here and the now and the person in front of you. I have to think that that's always going to be still the best thing. But there's other reasons that people have fantasies that they want to, and this is where this whole adult thing goes in. And there's a lot of that for whatever reason. And I'm not going to say even that's bad. I don't know. I think that there has to be a balance. The problem is when there's something new and exciting like this, usually things go out of balance, right? It kind of floods in that direction until there's a course correction. And there always is, right? There's always kind of like the middle ground where we start to, something supplants it, or we start to realize, oh, we have to have a balance. And I think we're not there yet. We're kind of in the like, let's all go, let's do it, and get an AI companion. Not me though.
Well, I think I see that on a day-to-day basis, and I certainly appreciate the example of older people who are isolated and do want that companionship. I think there's lots of ways that AI can play a role there, but I think time and time again, and I mean, it seems like you would agree with this as well. The real issues come into play when we're talking about the under 18 crowd, right? And so, speaking of fantasies, my fantasy is that one of the tech leaders, or maybe a few of them, get together and say, "Hey, you know what? uh, this stuff isn't really for kids. So 18 plus, have fun and enjoy your day." And I think that would actually solve quite a few problems that exist here, but I'm not confident that will happen. So I put it in the
Yeah.
fantasy category for now.
Yeah, that one. Look, it didn't happen with the internet. It's not going to happen with this. It's just, we're only going to learn in a way through pain and suffering. Where it's so like there's going to be a lot of things where like, oh, why did that happen? Oh, right. Oh, okay. Well, we'll try a little better. But we're I think the lessons history sort of has taught us, not necessarily always the right lesson, but like when we had, when you can drink alcohol in the 20s, right? What it was called, I'm forgetting the word for it, but basically no one could, right? And that was then,
Oh, prohibition, yeah.
right, prohibition. So then you have like all this crime that comes from it. So you want to be careful of that, but at the same time, I think that it's not necessarily a good analogy because, uh, you know, we know that there is content and information and interactions that people under 18 should not have. But AI doesn't intuitively know that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, thank you so much for helping to break this down for me. Just for people who want to read some of your work, I know, like I mentioned, you've been around for a couple of decades, and I have followed you for a really long time. It's great to finally connect in person, or at least over video. So, where can people go to follow along with your work?
Yeah, well, I'm currently editor at large for techradar.com, so you can go there and find stuff that I'm writing all the time. And of course, I'm on TikTok and I'm on various social on X and Blue Sky and Threads, talking up a storm. And sometimes you'll see me on television and go, "Why?" I don't know.
I love it. Love your work. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lance.
No, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Lance and Amber. Coming up next, we talk about staying resilient in a world of cyber scams and cyber crime.
You're listening to The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.
What does cyber resilience really mean, and how is it different from cybersecurity? To answer this critical question during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, Tony Anscombe, Chief Security Evangelist at ESET, joined Amber in the studio to talk resilience by design.
Tony, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, always good to be here, Amber.
We're going to talk about cyber resilience. So, first of all, for people who aren't familiar with that term, what exactly does it mean?
Well, it can mean different things to different people, but it's talking about how does your business run, or how does it operate if there's an issue with something that's digital, i.e. cyber. And that can be quite broad. People tend to think of it, because it's got the word cyber in front, they tend to think of it as a cyber incident, i.e. a cyber attack. But it actually is much broader than that. So, what happens if the power goes out? Yeah, that causes a cyber incident because all your digital stuff is now switched off and you still need to operate your business. A good example of that recently was, I don't know whether you noticed, Heathrow Airport went offline for a day.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Because the power went down and all the safety systems on part of the airport were switched off because they rebooted, and the airport decided to shut for nearly 24 hours. That's a great example of why you need to be cyber resilient. So you need to have that backup. You need to think about all the things that could happen to make sure your business can continue to operate.
How is this different from cybersecurity, just for people who are curious?
Well, cybersecurity fits into, it's part of cyber resilience, because if there was a cyber attack, then you need to mitigate that attack. You need to respond to it with the right measures and either block it or then deal with the attack as it happens. So cybersecurity is part of cyber resilience, but cyber resilience is much broader. I think the word, like I say, cyber tends to make people think of security, where cyber resilience is much broader. Think of it as risk. Cyber resilience is about understanding your risk as a business and what might happen within your business, about that risk. And of course, if we talk about risk, then every business will have a different view on where their line in the sand is. If you and I go to a blackjack table, you might be willing to lose $300. I might only be willing to lose $100. Every business owner also has a different line in the sand. So their appetite for risk may well be different. So their appetite for resilience might be different as well.
When we talk about risks, what type of risks are businesses facing right now? Because my assumption just from reading the news is that it's getting more difficult all the time because the risks are always changing.
Well, certainly from a cybersecurity perspective, there are lots of risks. From vulnerability, exploitation of vulnerabilities, and what that means is a flaw in a piece of software that gets exploited by a cyber criminal. There was a good example of that recently with ToolShell. What's called a 0 day, so a flaw that's never been seen before and somebody's already exploiting it. So businesses need to make sure they patch efficiently and understand what they've got in their organizations. But also then, social engineering attacks in businesses as well. Cyber criminals will socially engineer people on help desks or other members of staff, to get their credentials, log on, steal data, create ransomware, etc. Unfortunately, it's something that continually we see a stream of cyber attacks happening and unfolding in the media on companies, and businesses need to make sure they're protected against those.
When we think about cyber resilience, what are some of the mistakes that organizations are making when they think that they're resilient, but they absolutely are not? What are some of the things that maybe they do wrong?
Well, one of the things is you need to understand, firstly, what you're reliant on and what your dependencies are. So think about any business. You may think that from a cyber perspective, maybe I've got one or two payment methods, or maybe I've got a connection to a supplier. What happens actually if the supplier completely goes offline? It's not about your connection to the supplier, it's about them as well. So you look at I don't think companies think about those dependencies enough. And I'm kind of curious whether at some stage cyber criminals will start picking up on those dependencies as well. So imagine you run a fast food chain, and let's just say you're reliant on taco seasoning, and there are two suppliers for taco seasoning. Now, if is a cyber criminal, do I come and attack you, or do I just go and attack them and then make you pay the ransomware demand? Because I've turned off your ability to get taco seasoning and you need to close your business. So there is cyber resilience at the extreme, because your supply chain has been compromised. And I've taken away, I've looked at how your dependencies actually make you vulnerable.
When you think about some of the businesses that exist today, do you think organizations are doing a better job at being more resilient when it comes to cyber resiliency?
They're certainly getting better. Cybersecurity posture is certainly improving. And I think some of that is, one, I think there's an awareness within businesses. And I think it's become less of an IT issue. I think it's becoming more of a business issue, where the owners of businesses or the boards of businesses now understand they need to make their businesses resilient and understand the risk their business is at. I also think for those that have gone down the path of cyber risk insurance, where you're mitigating the financial risk, so insuring against it. There may be other reasons you've taken the insurance as well for services and such like. I think the insurers who have 400 years of understanding risk as a subject, maybe not digital risk, that's all in the last few years, they've also made companies think more about cybersecurity posture and making sure that they have the right tools in place to actually stop a cyber attack.
I really like what you said there in terms of cyber resilience being the responsibility of the entire organization, because I think you're exactly right. It used to be potentially something that people thought of as just being the job of the IT department. Can you talk a little bit more about why everybody needs to be aware within an organization about their organization being resilient to some of these cyber attacks?
Well, digital computing, however we want to term it, if you go back 10, 15 years, it was only a certain element of the business that relied on connectivity, computing, etc. But now, I can't think of a piece of a business that doesn't rely on it. And in fact, it's even difficult to think of a business that doesn't, an actual business that doesn't rely on it. Even your hairdresser, their online appointment system, if the online appointment system goes down, how do you book? Yeah? How do they know who's coming in? So my point here is there is virtually no business that isn't relying on digital infrastructure. And that means everybody in the business is reliant on digital infrastructure. So once we get there, then we're all responsible, because every person also is part of the attack surface. So a cyber criminal will come and attack anyone to get their credentials. Any person in the organization is a potential route in. So therefore, we all need to be aware of how to keep the company secure.
Talk to me a little bit to wrap things up about how ESET can help in terms of cyber resiliency and some of the work that you're doing.
Well, so there's cybersecurity posture, so making sure you've got the right tools in place. And that's becoming very sophisticated, especially for SMBs. Some of the advanced tools that are out there now really require expert management. So I'd recommend companies like that use things like managed detection and response services. So I outsource it to a group of experts. And that's one of the things we provide is MDR. But also we do a lot of awareness training as well. So we have awareness training where typically once a year, a company will send out to its employees, you need to go through this for insurance purposes, standard business disruption insurance purposes. That in itself, and simulation, say simulating phishing emails, making sure your staff don't click on them, etc. We can provide those services as well.
Excellent. Well, listen, Tony, thank you so much for joining me today and breaking this all down.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you, Tony and Amber, and thank you, ESET, for supporting the cybersecurity segment on the show. Coming up on next week's show, we'll have a report from the Attention Conference, an event taking place in Montreal with some of the leading thinkers on AI.
I am so looking forward to that event. 2 days of conversations around everything from AI regulation to how AI is a threat to democracy and lots more. If you want to see video versions of our interviews and the other Mac, please head on over to YouTube at Amber Mac, and we'll see you soon.
You're listening to The Amber Mac Show on Canada Talks, Sirius XM 167.